as the President of Zimbabwe and as their Commander-in-Chief, do acknowledge the issues they have drawn my attention to, and do believe that these were raised in the spirit of honesty and out of deep and patriotic concern for the stability of our nation and for the welfare of our people.
That was Robert Mugabe speaking on national television in Zimbabwe last hour. He was expected to resign, but instead, he gave a speech that raised many more questions about the future of the country. His critics are planning more protests and an impeachment vote. We have more from CBC's Margaret Evans in Harare.
We all had to wait a little while before it became clear what he was going to say. It was a very long speech, very rambling in a way. At one point he lost his way, and General Chiwanga, who's the man who orchestrated the takeover last week, had to help him find his place. But early on in the speech, I'll just read a little bit to you. We started to get a hint of what was coming. He said, he's talking about the operation, that takeover. He said, "The operation I have alluded to did not amount to a threat to our well-cherished constitutional order, nor a challenge to my authority as a head of state and government, nor even as commander-in-chief to the Zimbabwe Defense Forces." So he was basically saying it was not a challenge to his authority. We still waited till the very end of the speech to understand that he really wasn't going to resign, and that really became clear when he said that he is going to preside over the ruling party Congress, which is scheduled in early December. Clearly, he is maintaining his tradition of doing the unexpected. A lot of people actually who know him well said he won't go. He's said that he will not. He had hoped to die in office, but beyond that, he is a brilliant tactician. He wouldn't have remained in power for 37 years because this really punts the ball back to the military. What do they do now? I guess in the sense he has opted for impeachment because that is what his own party said they would do today if he didn't resign by noon tomorrow.
Margaret, it's a huge moment in history in Zimbabwe, altogether not a particularly clear one. So what do we expect the reaction to be?
I think people are going to be really, really angry. They'll be disappointed, but they'll be angry as well. And you know, it's interesting. We were down in the center of Harare today talking to people at kind of a prayer protest, they called it. They're saying this is a new day. We're moving on. You know, a lot of exhilaration, I should say. But we spoke to a couple of young women, and we were trying to get them to talk to us on camera. And one of them said, no, I don't want to be on camera in case, you know, it goes the other way, in case it goes back to the way it was before. So it gives you a sense of, you know, kind of how tenuous things still are. And even though this is a man who's no longer the president of the party, he's the president of the country, he remains under house arrest, under the control of the Zimbabwean Defense Forces. They're the ones who are controlling that broadcast that we saw. They're the ones that are choosing what people are seeing on their television sets, and yet defiantly, the 93-year-old dictator of this country for nearly 4 decades has said, "I'm not going anywhere. You're going to have to try a little bit harder to push me out."
So where do things go from here?
I don't know. I think we're going to have to see tomorrow. I suspect that ZANU-PF will follow through on their pledge to create a constitutional process that would allow them to impeach him. I think that there will be impatience. I think his negotiating power might start to diminish. And by negotiating power, I mean, you know, a safe exit from the country, not just for himself, but for his wife, Grace, who is hated by most of the military, by the people who have sort of coalesced around Emerson Mnangagwa, who is supposedly the man who would be taking over. So that's what we're going to be seeing now, is what's the next move of the military? How important do they think it is to try to get this resolved in their favor, or the way they think it should be, you know, through what they say would be legal means? or are they going to have to get a little bit more forceful? And how is ZANU going to react? I mean, we did see today these extraordinary scenes of the ruling party people dancing, after they voted to dismiss Mugabe. These are people who were supporting him just a few weeks ago, people who have propped up this regime for decades, putting basically putting their cards in the basket of the military and the generals. I mean, in terms of the popular opinion, I mean, that will also play with the generals. I mean, they can't ignore, nobody can ignore what happened on the streets here yesterday, the huge numbers of people coming out saying, this is it, we are turning the page. The page will turn, but perhaps not necessarily quite as quickly as everybody thought. Maybe they will have to go down this constitutional process, and maybe there will be protests on the street again.